Hello everyone and welcome to Ayrshire Military Collectibles. So in today's video what we're looking at is, we're doing a headdress of the world, and what we're looking at is the King's Own Scottish Borderers. It was a line infantry regiment of the British Army, and it was part of the Scottish Division. It was formed, well, it can trace its origins back all the way to the 18th of March 1689, when it was formed to fight in the Jacobite Wars against James, and it fought in lots and lots of battles of that war, of the Jacobite War. It wasn't until the 1st of July 1881 that it became known as the King's Own Scottish Borderers. The King's Own Borderers it became known as in the 1st of July 1881, and then in 1887 it got the name the King's Own Scottish Borderers. So that's when it actually became known as the King's Own Scottish Borderers. It fought in the during the Victorian time anyway. It fought during the Second Anglo-Afghan Wars. It fought in the Second Boer War. It fought in South Africa. It was also involved in operations throughout the empire, including Ireland and India and other places like that. So during the outbreak of the First World War, I'm only going to talk about the 1st and 2nd Battalion. I'm not going to talk about the TA battalions and stuff like that. I'm just going to talk about the two regular battalions. So the 1st Battalion, at the outbreak of the First World War, was stationed in India. From India it was deployed to Gallipoli, where it fought after the evacuation of Gallipoli. It found itself in Egypt, in Alexandria. After Alexandria it was moved to Marseille in 1916, where it participated in the Eastern Front and fought in battles of the Somme, Passchendaele, Alès, Cambrai, other places like that. The 2nd Battalion in 1914 found itself in Dublin, where it was involved in policing in Ireland. At that stage in 1914 you didn't really have basically the uprising hadn't started in 1914, so it was classified as a garrison or a home garrison at that stage. So as I said, the 2nd Battalion at the start of the war found itself being deployed to Le Havre in August 1914, found itself in battles of the Mons, Le Château, Battle of Vincennes, the Battle of Ypres, the Battle of Vimy Ridge. It also found itself in Passchendaele. So it was involved in a lot of battles. As I said, there was territorial battalions, that I'm not going to talk about them. During the Second World War, the regiment was actually stationed. The regiment was stationed between Ireland, Egypt, and Hong Kong. And then at the outbreak of the war, the 1st Battalion was called back to France, and it landed in France. As part of the expeditionary forces of the BEF. We know what happened there. It was later evacuated in the Dunkirk evacuations, and found itself in the Normandy beach landings and in the Battle of Caen a month later, and then they fought throughout the rest of the war, into Europe. The 2nd Battalion was in Burma, and in 1943 it was serving in the Burma campaign. It saw action in the Battle of Admin Box in February 1944, and the Battle of Impala in July of 1944. It served most of its time in the Middle East. Its territorial battalions were serving as part of the BEF, and they found themselves in the Normandy campaign. Post-war, 1st and 2nd Battalions were amalgamated into one to form one battalion in the regiment. So it was a one battalion regiment, and they found themselves in Palestine doing policing duties and stuff like that. It also found itself in the Malayan emergency. It also found itself in the Korean War. It was stationed in Aden. It was as I said, it was in Malaya, it was in Borneo, it was all over the place, all the way up through the 50s and 60s. And eventually found itself in Northern Ireland in 1962. Was its first deployment that I can find. It was in Northern Ireland. Served on and off throughout the Troubles in Northern Ireland. It also served in the Gulf War. It was one of the few Scottish regiments that were sent to the Yugoslavian wars. and it also served in Iraq in Operation Telek in 2003. And then the amalgamations continued in the British Army, and in excuse me, I just get my dates here. The amalgamation of the British Army regiments, and then in March 2026 or 2006, the Royal Scots Battalion and the King's Own Scottish Borderers found themselves amalgamated as part of the Royal Regiment of Scotland. So the regiment ceased to exist. It's got a number of Victoria Crosses, a number of battle honours. Its regiment is in, its museum, if I can remember correctly, is somewhere in Scotland anyway. I can't remember off the top of my head where the regimental museum is. Yeah, so it's very, very interesting and a very illustrious regiment. If I can zoom in here on the cap badge, I'll tell you a bit of history about the cap badge. Focus, there we go. So that's the cap badge. The eventual cap badge, which was decided on for the regiment, came out. It started to form what you see in front of you in 1832. There was lots of different amalgamations and stuff like that. But the modern badge itself can trace its history back to 1871, when it was worn on a Glengarry and then a peaked forage cap. In the 1890s, the badge was worn as a plate on the new regiment's helmets, and the eventual cap badge, which lasted the regiment until the amalgamation in 2006, consisted of the Cross of St Andrew, which is there in the middle, upon a circular inscribed with the King's Own Scottish Borderers, and which is also on Edinburgh Castle, with 3 turrets, and each of the turrets, if you look, the flags are flying to the left. Above and below the scroll you will see the mottos of the regiment, which is in Latin, so I'm not going to try and pronounce it. And it's topped off by St Edward's crown, which is the whole thing altogether. So yeah, so it's a very illustrious regiment. I'll just focus back a small bit again. It's a very illustrious regiment. Lots and lots of history with it. Stereotypical Scottish headdress, Glengarry. As you look at the checkerboard pattern, it's white red over black red, over white red, and then the cap edge again. So there you go. I hope you like what we provide here at Air Military Collectibles. Please like, please subscribe, and please tune in for the next video. And as always, if you want to get in contact with the channel or help the channel out, there is an Amazon wish list below, and there is a email. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you at the next video.